The floor was cold. My ears rang. Blood trickled past my jawline and onto the kitchen tile. Mom stood frozen by the sink. My brother? Breathing hard. Still holding the picture frame he'd just smashed into my skull. Then, silence. Until Mom broke it. He didn't mean it, she whispered, eyes flicking toward the door. We're not calling anyone. You know how much he has at stake. I didn't answer. Because I couldn't yet. Everything was spinning, except the part of me that suddenly, sharply knew. This wasn't a family. It was a crime scene with people who shared DNA. They didn't take me to the ER. I took myself. Sat in the waiting room with a towel pressed to my head. A woman handed me forms. I don't even remember signing them. When the doctor entered, she didn't say much at first. She cleaned the wound gently, parting my hair like it wasn't soaked in betrayal. Then she looked straight at me. No hesitation. No pity. Just a steady, almost sacred kind of fury. We're not covering for him this time. Before I could speak, she turned and picked up the phone. Dialed the police. My name is Raina. And if you think this story ends with an apology or a family reunion, keep watching. Because what happens when the person who's supposed to protect you uses silence as a weapon? What happens when blood becomes currency? And you're tired of paying? That night, they arrested him at our house. My mother called me 17 times. Left voicemails that swung between begging and blaming. I didn't answer. Because that wasn't my mother anymore. That was a woman who chose a future for one child. And a cover-up for the other. I stood by the window in a borrowed hoodie, watching blue and red lights bounce off hospital glass. And for the first time in my life, I felt seen. The hospital let me stay the night. Observation, they said. But I think the nurse just didn't want to send me home. I didn't sleep. I watched the second hand on the wall clock move. 3 full revolutions before sunrise. At 6:03 a.m., my mother texted, "This could have ruined his entire career. I hope you're happy." I stared at the screen like it might grow fangs. Then powered off the phone. I wasn't going to explain my trauma to a woman who treated it like an inconvenience. Later that morning, the social worker arrived. Her voice was soft, but not weak. "You don't need to defend them. We've seen this before." I wanted to scream. Then why didn't anyone stop it? But instead, I just said, "I'm not going back." She nodded like she already knew, and handed me a packet with shelter options, legal resources, and emergency contact numbers. I wasn't a child, but that didn't mean I wasn't in danger. The news broke later that day. Local paper. Small section. Quiet wording. College senior arrested on domestic assault charges involving sibling. They didn't use our names, but people knew. And by that evening, it was on Facebook. My cousin messaged, "What the hell happened?" I didn't reply, because for years, they all saw him throw things. Saw me flinch when he walked in a room. And no one said anything. Not once. Now, suddenly, everyone was curious. Suddenly, everyone wanted the whole story. But where were they when I had to wear long sleeves in June? Where were they when I lied about falling down the stairs 3 times? Mom left one final voicemail that night. "He's your brother. Families forgive." I stared at the wall, head still aching, and whispered, "Families also protect." And she didn't. 2 days later, the detective called. "Raina, we've filed the charge officially. You're safe. But you should know, your mother posted his bail." Of course she did. She didn't bring me soup. She didn't check if I could walk straight yet. She brought him home. Like the glass in my scalp never happened. Like her son's future was the only thing worth bandaging. I moved into a temporary safe house. A converted women's shelter. Warm tea. Shared rooms. And stories too heavy for daytime TV. One girl told me her dad used to lock the fridge. Another hadn't been hugged in 5 years. None of us were alike. And yet, somehow, we were exactly the same. My court advocate said we could press for a no-contact order. I said yes. Immediately. But then she paused. "There's something else," she said. "Your brother's attorney filed a character defense packet. Your mom gave a letter." I read it. She called me emotional. Said I had a history of dramatizing situations. Said my brother was a model student under stress, not a threat.
She ended it with,
"We're a good family. This was just a misunderstanding." I stared at the word "we" like it was poison. We were never anything. That night, I sat with a pen and a blank form. Victim statement. 3 pages. I didn't hold back. I wrote about the bruises, yes. But I also wrote about the birthdays he ruined. The broken plates. The way my mom would look away every time I cried. I finished it with one sentence. "If you let him walk, you're teaching him that hurting women has no cost, and that mothers can co-sign it with silence." I signed my name, Raina Collins, and I underlined it twice, because if they were going to keep pretending I was invisible, I'd make sure my name was the last thing they read. The courtroom smelled like old paper and bleach. My hands were ice. My ribs still ached when I breathed too deep. But I wore my father's watch and a navy blazer I borrowed from a shelter worker named Elise. She hugged me before I stepped in. Said, "You're not here to beg. You're here to be heard." My brother sat across the aisle. Clean shave. Pressed suit. Eyes rehearsed.
"Next to him, Mom."
Her hair done. Makeup flawless. Wearing pearls like it was Sunday service. She didn't look at me once. But when the judge asked if I was ready to speak, she flinched. I stood. Legs shaking. Voice low but sharp. "I am." And then I read. The whole thing. The bruises. The concussions. The things they said after. How silence was safer than truth in our house. I told them how my mother taught me to hide, and my brother learned that power didn't need apology. And when I got to the last line, "If you let him walk, I promise you, I won't be the last girl he hurts," you could hear a pin drop. The prosecutor nodded once, solemn. The judge asked no questions. He simply said, "We'll reconvene in 2 days for ruling." Outside, reporters waited. I didn't stop for interviews. But one of them yelled out, "Raina, any regrets?" I turned just for a second.
No.
I finally told the truth. Let them figure out what to do with it. Back at the shelter, the women clapped when I walked in. One said, "You were ice on that stand." Chilling. I smiled, but inside I felt something else. Not pride, not vengeance, just stillness. The kind you get after years of holding your breath. Because I knew something now, even if the judge didn't believe me.
I did.
And that was enough to never be silent again. 2 days later, the verdict came in. I didn't sit in the courtroom this time. I stood. I wanted to feel it. The judge didn't drag it out. Guilty. 1 count of aggravated assault. No probation. 90 days in county lockup. Mandatory anger management. No contact for 2 years. My brother's lawyer tried to object. My mother started crying. But not for me. Never for me. She ran after the bailiff like this was a funeral, grabbing at her son like she was the one being sentenced.
Me?
I just exhaled. 1 breath. But the deepest I'd taken in years. As I stepped outside the courthouse, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. The message?
"Hi. You don't know me.
I was your brother's ex. I just wanted to say thank you. What you did saved someone else too." I didn't reply, but I saved the message. Later that night, while packing up my things at the shelter, Elise walked in. "There's something you need to know," she said gently. "Your mother left a voicemail for the director." Of course she did. She says you exaggerated. She's claiming mental instability. She's trying to get your statement discredited after the fact. I laughed. A soft, bitter sound. She's still protecting him. Elise nodded. But she doesn't know this isn't just a courtroom anymore. This is a movement. She handed me a file. Inside, the offer letter. A nonprofit for women's legal advocacy had seen my case. They wanted to hire me.
To speak.
To write. To help other women take the mic back. "You up for it?" she asked. I looked down at my bandaged hand, then up at the door, and said, "I was made for it. Because here's the thing. My mother used to say my silence was strength. But now I know. Silence isn't strength. Voice is. and mine was just getting started. My first speech was at a community college. Tiny stage, 30 metal chairs, 2 microphones, one of them crackling. I still wore the navy blazer, still traced the watch on my wrist before speaking, like Dad's hands were steadying mine from somewhere unseen. I looked at the crowd, girls with notebooks, mothers in the back, one boy in a hoodie, eyes locked on me like he was learning what pain actually looked like. I began. Sometimes, your own house becomes a crime scene, and sometimes the people who built it hand you the silence like a weapon. I told them everything. The wall, the blood, the cover-up. But I didn't end with revenge. I ended with power. I am not the girl they raised me to be. I am the woman I became in spite of them. Afterward, they clapped. Some cried. One girl hugged me so tight, I felt her ribs shake. But what I didn't expect was the article the next morning. Mother of convicted abuser responds to daughter's speech. There it was. A glossy op-ed. Photos from her front porch. Her quote, "She's fabricating to stay relevant. We're the ones truly suffering." My hands didn't shake. Not this time. Because I knew what was coming. By noon, the comments turned. You left her bleeding. You bailed out an abuser. If silence was strength, why are you the only one talking now? Mom deleted the post. Her salon Yelp page flooded with 1-star reviews. And me? I didn't post anything. Didn't tweet. Didn't clap back. I went to the next school. And the next. Because legacy isn't offended with internet rage. It's built with proof. And my voice had become undeniable. I wasn't famous. I was free. And I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge is living out loud in a world that begged you to stay quiet. The letter came on a Tuesday. No return address. Just my name, handwritten, soft slant. I almost didn't open it, but something about the quiet weight of it made me pause. Inside, one page, torn at the edges like whoever wrote it had second-guessed every word. The handwriting was familiar. I watched the video, the one from the campus talk. You stood straighter than I've ever seen you. You didn't stutter once. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know that I finally see it. What we did, what we let happen, and what you carried alone. There was no signature, but I knew it was my sister. She hadn't spoken to me since the arrest. She'd vanished into silence the way Mom always taught us. Keep it pretty, keep it polite, and keep it buried. But that letter? It cracked something. Not forgiveness. Just space. That same night, I passed the mirror in my tiny apartment. No bruises. No taped ribs. Just me, untouched, unbroken. I reached into the drawer and pulled out the old court transcript. My testimony. Printed. Highlighted.
Filed.
I slid it into an envelope and wrote one word on the front. Remember. Then I mailed it. To my mother. No return address. Just her name. Because some stories aren't retold for sympathy. They're reminders. And sometimes, even a woman who spent her whole life silencing others needs to be haunted by the voice she tried to erase. The next week, the nonprofit offered me a speaking series. 8 cities, 3 months, fully paid. Before I left, I stood at the window. Sunlight broke across the table. And for the first time, I let myself say it aloud. I'm proud of her. Not the girl who stayed silent, but the woman who stepped into the fire and came out louder. 3 months later, I stood on a stage in New York City. The lights were warm, the room packed, every seat filled with people who knew what it felt like to be called dramatic, when all they were was bleeding. I spoke slower this time, not because I was nervous, but because I finally understood the weight of my voice. I used to think silence made me strong, that if I didn't cry, if I didn't speak, if I just held it all, I'd survive. But silence didn't save me. Truth did. Afterward, a woman approached me, older, wrinkles like rivers down her cheeks. She didn't say anything, just handed me a folded photo. Inside, a picture of her daughter, smiling. Gone too soon. She mouthed the words. Thank you for speaking when we couldn't. I nodded. No hug, just hands pressed together, a silent kind of grace. That night, I returned to my hotel, checked my phone for the first time in hours. One voicemail. From the shelter. From Elise. Raina, your mom stopped by. She didn't ask to see you. Just left a small box. Said you'd know what to do with it. I returned 2 weeks later. Inside the box? My baby blanket. A photograph of me at 5. A note that simply read, I can't undo what I allowed, but I can carry it now. I hope someday that matters. It didn't change what happened. It didn't heal the past. But for the first time, I didn't feel invisible to the woman who birthed me. I sat on the porch of the shelter, watched a girl run across the lawn with her backpack too big for her body. And I thought, we are not our families. We are the chapters we write after the fire. That night, I opened a fresh journal, page 1, and wrote the first sentence. She was never weak. She was waiting to be heard. The next morning, I mailed the manuscript draft to a publisher. A memoir, titled, The Loudest Room in the House. My name below it, bold, black ink, Raina Collins. And this time, there was no silence left to bury.